What's up, guys? This is Coach Grant with First Down Training. And today we're going to be breaking down some of the best routes that wide receivers can run and how you guys can get separation against any kind of press coverage, man coverage, zone coverage from a DB. So I hope this video helps you guys out. Hope it could teach you a few new things. But also, fellas, if you're a wide receiver and you would like to train with us this offseason, we are traveling out to 15 states across the country for 2-day-long QB and wide receiver training camps. Next up, we'll be coming out to San Francisco, then Orlando, New Orleans, Charlotte, Dallas, the DMV, St. Louis, Honolulu, Boston, Cleveland, Austin, Seattle, Newark, Denver, and Los Angeles, California. So if you guys are local to one of those cities, would like to train with myself and my staff of coaches for 2 whole days, check out that very first link in the description below. We'd love to have you there. Let's get started. So now, first things first, we're going to be talking about a slant route versus inside shade catch technique. So this is a very, very tough thing that a lot of wide receivers face, because normally what we would do is, like, let's say Stephon Diggs was on the ball and this DB was right up in his face, inside shade. Normally what I would say is you would want to do a diamond release, 3 hard steps to the outside, get that DB to flip his hips, and then we slip underneath. But he has got some space. We got about 2 yards away from us, and he's inside shade, which is where we need to run. So what should I do? And Diggs runs a perfect example of just that. So let's play this full speed. So he closes the distance first, then gets to the diamond release. That is the number one thing that you would have to do in that situation. Close the distance and close this cushion with the DB. By cushion, I mean space. So when we have an inside shade guy, he's inside shade for a reason, right? He is trying to prevent the inside route. So he's trying to prevent the slant, trying to prevent the dig, the post, everything that goes to the inside. So when he's coming off the ball, if Diggs were to just take 3 steps to the outside and sell like he's running a fade, yeah, that might get the DB to run, but there's too much of a cushion. There's too big of a gap between the two of them, so it would not work. So what we have to do is we have to close the distance with the DB. We have to get on his toes, so when I take those 3 steps, I am hip to hip with him. I call this kind of like a crossover diamond release personally. So Diggs comes off the ball, he hits him with this kind of 1-2 to the inside, right? Closing the space, getting onto his toes, making him uncomfortable, and then he takes these 3 hard steps to the outside. He kind of breaks down in 2 steps, which is totally fine as long as we have some speed on the 45. Because now he had speed, he committed his hips and shoulders, he actually ran full stride. That got the DB to open up. But now, since I closed space and stepped on his toes, that allows me to slip underneath and get some separation. He doesn't have a ton of room to react, open up, and drive on the slant. Imagine if he did this, if Diggs ran this diamond release, but he was 2 steps wider this way because he didn't close the distance. That is an easy play for that DB because we ultimately are catching the ball here, and we have to beat the DB to that spot. But if I don't close space, he is going to easily open up and beat me to that spot himself to get a PBU or even a pick. So fellas, number one thing, anytime that we are facing this type of coverage, even if you're running an outside breaking route, like let's say you're running a fade, you have to close distance. You can never try to run away from this guy. We do not want to operate with any space between the two of us. We have to close the distance, make him uncomfortable, and get hip to hip with the DB. Let's play this thing again, full speed one more time. Great job by Diggs, showcasing that crossover into that diamond to win on that slant. Okay, so now this route from Waddle is absolutely insane. I've honestly never seen a route like this. I think this is extremely high level, and for him to try this in a game is crazy. I think this route did not get enough credit, did not get enough publicity. He didn't get a ton of separation, but like just the concept of this, to hold the DB to the inside, to get enough separation to where he could catch the ball and be dangerous, because you get Waddle the ball in space, he's dangerous. Absolutely insane. So let's play this full speed. So he does a dive release into this fake throw by almost, but it's like a rocker step. It's not a fake throw by where he breaks down. So he's still able to maintain timing with his QB. So let's talk about this. So we have this like head up press look, right? DB's head up. He's got about 2 yards of space. So Waddle decides to go with a dive release. A dive release is one of probably, if you're on the faster side of things, probably one of the best releases you can use when you have head up press, because it sells like you are running a drag. And nobody wants to cover a guy who runs a sub 4.40, like probably sub 4.3, I think he's that fast, on a drag. Nobody wants to do that. So he's going to be over anxious to play this thing. So Waddle, a dive release is where you take 2 hard steps to the inside. You see how his left foot is? Well, he might have started with his outside foot up. So if he starts with his outside foot up, it would be 3 steps. But more traditionally speaking, like let's say the quarterback's to the inside, obviously your right foot's up, it would be 2 hard steps crossing this guy's face. If your stance is switched, it would be 3 hard steps. But pretty much he dives to the inside for 3 steps, trying to really commit his hips, really commit his shoulders, going fast, make this guy think that it is a drag. It is super essential when doing this dive release that you have to sell this movement. When you dive to the inside, it's got to be full commitment to that drag because that's the only way we get him to commit. A lot of guys will take 3 choppy steps, 2 choppy steps. Maybe they reach out with the break point, raise their chest up, or they just run up tall. That DB ain't going to bite. He knows it's not a drag. You have to sell with your pad level. You have to sell with your body language and your speed to make it look like a drag. So now when he puts the brakes on, he bursts upfield. And instead of just breaking off of his inside foot and going out to the route, he throws this like crossover move, which is insane because normally what this would look like is like a fake throw by. You're attacking the blind spot. We maybe took an outside release. We got him to commit and we slip underneath to run a dig. And that's what he's trying to make it look like here. He runs up. He gives him this little 1-2 to the blind spot. Just to try this in a game is crazy. Like I said before, it's crazy. It's such a high level route. There's so much creativity going on with this route. And this is something that you can 100% do. It's one of those things where you got to have repped it a bunch. I don't recommend trying this where you just like walk into a game and just, okay, I'm going to do this move. It's like, this is something that you have to rep out constantly. You have to break this into different parts. You have to do this route just with the dive release and go speed cut it. Then you have to do a fake throw by with this 1-2 without the dive release to get it down. And then you can combine the two. But this is a great, very, very high-level route that Jalen Waddle ran right here to just threaten the blind spot, get him to stumble a little bit, which gets you some open space. If you're a fast guy, I recommend trying to add these things to your tool bag because, again, dive release sells drag, fake throw by can really get that DB to react. And then when you could catch that ball with even just a yard of space, fellas, yard of space, you could do a lot of damage being quicker. Let's play this thing again, full speed one more time. Great job by Waddle, selling that dive release, selling drag, using that fake throw by on almost like a rocker step to get that ball with some separation. Okay, so now we're going to be talking about how to manipulate a DB's leverage now. So when you guys are running routes, a big part of knowing, what I need to do. Because remember, we talked about that very first Stephon Diggs clip, right? Where was he lined up, that DB? He was lined up inside shade. So we talked about why he was inside shade. He's inside shade to take away the inside. He's inside shade to prevent the slant, the dig. So when it comes to your routes, knowing why the DB is playing a certain way is essential to having success and being able to pick the correct move to use to be able to know how to structure the route. So we're looking at Antonio Brown here. He's got this inside shade off man coverage. So do you think the DB's responsibility changes from inside shade off man versus inside shade press man? No, he's got the same exact responsibility. Now he's just expecting kind of a deeper route. He's expecting us to run a post, a dig, maybe a deep skinny post, not so much a slant. So he's inside shade off man, but it's the same coverage responsibilities. So if you had inside shade press and you had to run a fade, what would you do? You would attack him inside and then go run the fade. But now because he's inside shade off man, a lot of guys panic. What they'll do is they'll just go take off and run. But this DB is going to squeeze you to that sideline because that's exactly what he wants you to do, and you won't have any space. So what Antonio Brown does here is he takes an inside stem and squares up this DB. He attacks his leverage to the inside to get this DB to hold his leverage to the inside. His sole purpose being inside shade is what? To prevent the post and the dig. So if we can threaten him with that post and with that dig, you know what that's going to do. That's going to move him off the platform. He's going to keep his leverage and weave to the inside, because that's his responsibility. And guess what? That is a lot of space right there for that QB to throw me open. I could put my head down. I could really accelerate. And you see, he's got room to fade us out because we created that space. If you're one of those guys that just takes off and runs and you rely on your speed, that can only work for so long. That is not sustainable, fellas. Like in high school, you come up to the ball, youth ball, I don't even recommend this in high school and youth ball because I would rather have you run good routes because that makes it easier on the quarterback. I got experience with both spots, fellas. Trust me. I need space to be able to throw you open on a fade. So a lot of guys will just take off and run. Cannot do that. Run a quarterback-friendly route. Give that QB some space to throw you open. Let's play this thing again, full speed one more time. Great job by Antonio Brown attacking and then creating that space like we said. Okay, so now, next thing I want to talk about, to have, elite route running, you got to bring something extra to the table with your press releases in terms of explosion. You know what I mean? Like the guys who get a ton of separation are not the guys who do basic things off the line slowly. You know what I mean? So like we talk a lot about Like I talk a lot about keeping things simple off the line, not over exaggerating certain movements, not doing the fancy stuff, keeping it simple, but also keeping it efficient. But when you do these efficient type moves, you have to have some speed and some explosion, as that's the only way it's going to work against a DB who is good. So we're looking at Stephon Diggs use something I call it a prep step. Some people call it a gather step. There are a lot of different names for it. No name that you say is wrong as long as you know what it is. So Diggs here, watch his front foot. He takes, to the untrained eye, people who don't know much about football will say that, oh, that's a false step. You shouldn't take a false step like that. Incorrect, because this is not a false step. This is a false step if this DB is 7 to 8 yards off and he's got to run a curl off of his fourth outside step. Because if he takes a step back with his front foot, his first outside step is going to be like half a yard rather than being a full yard. That's when this turns into a false step. But when it is press coverage and you can use that front foot, that like punch step, that prep step, whatever you want to call it, as a source of explosion, that is a part of the release. So when you guys pick that front foot up, he's doing something we call a wide step release. He takes this outside foot, he steps wide, tries to get the DB to jump outside, and then takes the inside release. And I love this against outside shape press or head up press because it really makes it look like a fade in one step if we have some speed. So we look at this example. He takes a step with the front foot almost in place. He is pushing off of this foot to throw his hip to give him some explosion and actually step wide to the outside. This sells like it's a speed release because now his hips and his shoulders, his entire body even, can go to the outside to make that DB think outside, to make him think fade, because that is what he is looking at. But I don't sell this as much if I'm not explosive with the front foot. If I'm not being explosive and taking that step, that prep step to shoot me out, and I just come from a position of being flat-footed and I just jab with the outside foot, fellas, that's not enough speed. Come on now, you know better than that. There are a lot of people that will say that, oh, this is your NFL guys, they should they can get away with this stuff because they're some of the best athletes in the world. I guarantee you that you start paying attention to wide receivers when they do their releases. They will either take a prep step or they will even kick step with their back foot behind and then do a wide step release or some kind of crossover because it generates explosion. And when you go up against a talented DB, you got to have explosion and speed. That's just the way it is, fellas. That's why everybody talks about 40 times and how fast is he, how explosive is he when they're recruiting guys for college, because when you get out of high school, everybody you play against is going to be fast and they're going to have probably pretty decent technique. So let's play this thing again full speed. You want to run those explosive elite routes, you need to bring something to the table off the line like a prep step or a kick step to generate explosion. All right, fellas, really want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you guys have any questions at all, don't hesitate to leave those in the comment section below. We always appreciate the feedback. It's always great to hear from you guys. And again, fellas, if you would like to come out to one of our 15 off-season camps, check out that very first link in the description below. We'd love to have you guys out there for 2 whole days of training. So I'll see you guys next time.